What's up guys, welcome to Yai's Garage YouTube channel, back again with another video. And today I'm going to be recording this video in my garage because it is extremely cold outside and I don't feel like going outside. So today I'm just going to be recording in the garage. For those of you that are new to the channel, this is my garage. I have the Yai's Garage banner up here. I actually made some new changes to the garage, like this new shelf that I will go through in another video in more detail, but you know, the garage is much cleaner now. Before it was an absolute mess. And this car right here is our other car in the channel. This is a 2004 Civic Si EP3. We got this car earlier last year and had transformed this car into a track car. So if you guys haven't watched those videos, go check out the videos of us changing all the suspension, wrapping the car, changing it into a different color, and taking this car to a few track days. So if you haven't watched those videos already, go check those out. But in today's video, I'm going to be going over how to make 400 horsepower with your G37 or 370Z while it is an A. So the G37 and 370Z has a 3.7 liter V6 engine. It makes 330 crank horsepower and 270 foot-pounds of torque. These cars are rev happy, so most of the power band is on the higher RPMs. About 5,000 to 7,000 RPMs is when it makes peak horsepower. They are pretty low on torque. So I'm going to go over some of the modifications that you have to do in order to make that 330 crank horsepower to 400 horsepower, or as close to it as possible. So the very first thing that you have to do, like any other car, and I've talked about this in one of my other videos of the top 5 modifications to do to these cars, is an exhaust. If you want to make the most horsepower, you want to go with a catback exhaust with a 3-inch pipe. There are a bunch of different options for exhaust for the 370Z and G37 platform, but specific ones are 3 inches while others are 2.5 inches. Just from the top of my head, I know Motordyne for the G37 is a 3-inch, so is the Tomei. Tomei is a single exit though. There are Greddy's also 3 inches. So if you want to make the most horsepower, you want to go with the 3-inch exhaust, mainly because of airflow. So the bigger you go on the exhaust end, the more horsepower you'll be able to squeeze out of the NA motor. Now, every motor, every dyno is different, so you will see differing numbers on different dynos. Depending on the condition of your car too, you'll see conflicting results. But overall, from what I've read online and from the people I've spoke to, the wider the exhaust, the more horsepower you'll be able to squeeze out. But you know, there are people that have the 2.5-inch exhaust, like the NVIDIA exhaust, that have made similar power as well. So it's not necessarily always true, but just the rule of thumb, the wider the exhaust for these cars, the more horsepower you'll be able to squeeze out. The second modification that you have to do in order to get close to that 400 crank horsepower number are long tube intakes. I recommend the Z1 long tube intakes. Now, I am not sponsored by Z1 Motorsports, but if you guys are familiar with the 370Zs and G37s or the VQ platform at all, you know about Z1 Motorsports. They've done a lot of research, extensive research on these motors, and they've created a lot of different products for these cars. On my car, I actually have the Z1 long tube intakes, and these front cones are actually the sport versions. I'm not necessarily sure if they actually make that big a difference, but they advertise it that way. So these long tube intakes are really good for airflow and help optimize as much horsepower as you can make. You want to go with the long tube intakes and not the short intakes. So there are different brands that make the intakes, but you know, I think Stillin and Z1 Motorsports, if I'm not mistaken, are the only ones that make the long tube intakes that go all the way to the front of the grill. These are the ones that will get you the most horsepower. The ones that are the short intakes that only come up to here are practically useless. I've actually read online that they actually are bad for your car because it doesn't dissipate the heat properly. It'll kind of keep the heat within the engine bay. So it actually reduces power. So stay away from those. It's actually better to just run your stock intake with different intake inlets versus getting those short intakes. If you are going to get intakes, please get the long tube intakes. I like the Z1 Motorsports because it's a reputable brand. So, but you know, you can go with the Stillings too. Those are fine as well. Speaking of Z1 Motorsports, now here is the more detailed nitty-gritty parts aside from just your normal bolt-on parts, you know, like exhaust, intakes, and a tune that you can do to try to push that peak horsepower number as close to 400 crank as possible. So if you go on Z1 Motorsport on their website, and they have a 400 horsepower 400 horsepower kit for these cars. All right, so if you go on their website here, you'll see the 370Z G37 400 horsepower package, and it includes some of the items that I mentioned before, but this part is this package is $3,600. Now I will say that this is extremely overpriced. It would be better to just purchase some of these items used from Marketplace yourself and just do this package yourself. But some of the other items that come with this package that will help make more horsepower are the Z1 ported upper intake manifold that helps a lot with making more power, and it also comes with the cams. So now the cams are not a full bolt-on, right? You will need to open the engine up to install the cams, but the cams do help with all the air that the rest of the supporting mods that you installed to make as much horsepower possible. According to the Z1 Motorsports website, and they made a full video on this, which I'll link below, they were able to make 390 wheel horsepower on their 370Z and almost about 290 foot-pounds of torque, which is really good. That the torque number especially is very impressive because these cars are very low on torque, so you need to rev them out, and they are lacking torque. So it's the torque that really will help the car become faster. So that number is really important. But with the full 400 horsepower package, you'll be able to get to that 400 horsepower crank, so around 350, 360 wheel horsepower, which is, you know, almost 100 above what is you know, stock. So these cars stock are 270 wheel horsepower. And of course, as you do all of these bolt-on modifications, and if you go with the full cams and the ported manifold, you have to get the car tuned, or else all the mods will be useless, especially on the NA motor. So there's several different companies that you can get your tunes from. The very popular one is Admin Tuning. There's another, you can get the UpRev tune. I think that's the one that Z1 Motorsports recommends. And then there's a bunch of other local tuners that also tune a lot of these G's and Z's. So, but if you want to stick with the reputable guys, you go with Admin Tuning. He's tuned, you know, thousands of these cars, the G37s, 370Zs, 350Zs. So he's very familiar with the VQ community and cars and the VQ platform. So now I can't talk about all of these modifications without bringing up price. A lot of people argue if the Z1 Motorsports 400 horsepower package is worth it or not. As I just showed you guys, the full package that includes the catback exhaust intakes as well as the ported manifold and cams all cost $3,600. With tax, shipping, it's going to be over $4 grand, which is a lot of freaking money just on bolt-ons. And this is a NA motor, so you're not even, you know, any forced induction, no turbo, no supercharger. I think that it is overpriced. I would not recommend getting the actual package itself. I even think that doing full bolt on these cars is extremely expensive compared to any other car like BMWs, Mercedes. Like you can just do a downpipe, charge pipe, and a tune, and those cars will make easily over 100 horsepower wheel. While you need to spend thousands of dollars on just bolt-ons, intake, exhaust, just to break 400 crank horsepower. So it is extremely expensive and overpriced to modify these cars, unfortunately. I do believe it's better to just save up more money and get a supercharger kit. That is something that I'm planning on doing, or even a turbo kit, although turbo is not as reliable. But because a supercharger kit's about $6,500 from Soho Motorsports. So, but the installation process is a bit harder. So I completely understand doing full bolt-on. I'm actually doing it as well because it comes out to cheaper than a supercharger, obviously. So what I would recommend is, if you are doing full bolt-on, is to buy these parts used from Facebook Marketplace. Do not buy them brand new, because that is a waste of money. One more thing I want to note. So I talked about getting, the full intakes, catback exhaust. If you want to go the extra route, you can do the plenum, the ported manifold, the upper plenum, lower plenum. And another thing I forgot to mention is E85. So a lot of people will do the upgraded fuel pump and flex fuel to run E85 on these cars. That will exponentially give you, 10, 20 extra horsepower wheel. So if you are in a state where E85 is readily available, somewhere like California or other states, where I am, New Jersey, you don't have E85 readily available. You'd have to travel pretty far for that. So I would not want to do that. But if you want to squeeze out as much power as possible from this naturally aspirated 3.7 liter, you can also go with E85, which will help you make a ton of more power. The 370Zs and G37s are really fun cars. They're quick enough. They're rear-wheel drive if you don't get the all-wheel drive, but all-wheel drive is not as fun as rear-wheel drive. So these cars, make decent amount of power to definitely have fun with. But even after doing these full bolt-on, don't expect to go around and beating, the B58s, the M340is, the Beamer, Mercedes that have turbos. They're just too fast. Unfortunately, these motors, the VQ37s, are NA, right? They don't make that much power, even with full bolt-ons. It's respectable. It's enough to have fun, but you're not going around and beating these turbo, more modern cars. So unless you go and turbo the 3.7 liters or supercharge them. These motors are extremely strong, so you can make big power if you do go with the turbo setup, but then you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on this. So if you do want to stick with the big dogs, you should go get the VR30, so the Q60s, the Q50s, or the 400Z if you can get your hands on those. And those cars, since they are turbo, all you need to do is charge pipe, down pipe, tune, exhaust, and those cars make 400 wheel horsepower. Now 400 wheel horsepower is completely different from 400 crank horsepower. 400 wheel is closer to 500 crank horsepower. So if you do want, if you're in the game to go fast and race people and whatnot, you go with the VR30s. But if you have the 3.7 liters, I love these motors. They're high revving, they're super fun. And these are some of the modifications that you can do to make more horsepower, get as close as possible to that 400 crank horsepower. Well, that's the end of this video. I hope it was helpful. It's probably pretty short, but there are a bunch of other videos on the internet. Do your research. There's a lot of different ways to make power in these cars. If you don't want to spend too much money, whatnot, you can go with the upgraded intake, inlets in your stock airbox, still be able to make some power. So there's a lot of different routes that I also did not touch on. So go browse the web, go on YouTube. There's a bunch of other videos. I'll link the Z1 Motorsport video down below for additional information on their 400 horsepower package that I did not touch on. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. A lot more modifications coming, a lot of new things, changes in this channel. Please subscribe if you're new. I'm trying to grow the channel as much as possible and stay consistent with the content, and look forward to new content. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.